Commander Vexstar stretched his four powerful arms as he walked across the bridge of his massive flagship, the Dominator. The ship was 3 kilometers long, bristling with plasma cannons and shield generators that could level entire cities. His reptilian skin gleamed under the blue light of the holographic displays, each scale a testament to battles fought across the galaxy. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a war. Lieutenant Krelmoth, his trusted aide, approached with a data tablet clutched in his clawed hands. "Sir, we've completed our analysis of the new species. They call themselves humans. Our scouts report they've only recently developed faster-than-light travel." Star's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the information. 3 major galactic wars had shaped his reputation. The Silicon Crusade against the crystalline beings of Zarian Prime had lasted 15 years. The machine war against the robotic collective of the Andromeda Sector had claimed billions of lives. The Psionic Rebellion, where entire star systems had been torn apart by telepathic warfare, had been the bloodiest conflict in galactic history. "Show me their military capabilities," Vexstar ordered. The holographic display shifted, showing crude human spacecraft that looked like metal boxes with primitive rocket engines. Their weapons were chemical-based projectiles and basic energy weapons. Their largest warship was smaller than a hegemony patrol craft. "Commander, their technology is at least 200 years behind our standard," Krelmoth reported. "Their ships have no energy shields, no plasma weapons, and their fastest vessels can barely reach half the speed of our slowest transports." Vexstar's scaled lips pulled back in what his species considered a smile. Finally, a simple assignment. After dealing with the telepathic nightmares of the ethereal dominion and the nanoswarm horrors of the Void Collective, this will be refreshing. He activated the communication system. "All fleet commanders, prepare for Operation Swift Strike. We'll demonstrate our superiority, accept their surrender, and integrate them into the hegemony. Should take no more than a few standard cycles." The other ship commanders appeared as holograms around him. Admiral Zorthik of the Annihilator nodded his massive head. "Shall we deploy the full fleet, Commander?" "Unnecessary. Take 3 battleships. And a dozen assault cruisers? We don't want to completely terrify them into extinction. Leave the rest of the fleet in reserve." Meanwhile, in the depths of space near Earth, humanity was having its own meeting. Admiral Hyeonsu Kim stood in the command center of Orbital Defense Station Prometheus, watching the massive alien ships approach on long-range sensors. The 50-year-old Korean officer had dedicated his life to preparing for this moment, though he'd always hoped it would involve peaceful contact. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel," reported Captain Taman Park, his voice tense. The message was clear and arrogant. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet. You will surrender immediately and submit to the authority of the galactic hegemony. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization." Hyeonsu's weathered face hardened. "Send a response. Tell them we need time to consider their offer." "Sir, they're giving us 6 hours before they begin their attack," Captain Park reported. "Then we use every minute. Contact all defense coordinators. Begin immediate civilian evacuation of all outer colonies. And get me Colonel Eugene Lee." Cheers. Away at Mining Station Alpha 7, Colonel Eugene Lee was already preparing for the impossible. The young Special Forces officer had volunteered to lead the defense of humanity's most remote outpost, knowing it would likely be the aliens' first target. Her team of 40 Marines had spent the last 2 days turning the mining facility into a fortress. "Sergeant Choi, how are the explosives coming along?" she asked, checking her modified assault rifle. Sergeant Dong-Han Choi looked up from the improvised mines he was placing. "We've rigged the main corridors with everything we could find. Mining explosives, fuel cells, even some of the reactor. Coolant. When they come through those doors, they're going to get a warm welcome." Private G1 Kim, barely 21 years old, was setting up a heavy machine gun position. "Colonel, do you really think we can hold them off?" Yujin placed a hand on the young soldier's shoulder. "We're not here to win, Ju-1. We're here to teach them that humans don't go quietly. Every minute we hold them here is another minute for Earth to prepare." The alien fleet arrived with overwhelming force. Vexstar's ships emerged from hyperspace like metal mountains, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon ports. The mining station looked like a tiny insect compared to even the smallest alien vessel. "Begin the assault," Vexstar commanded. "Standard protocol. Disable their defenses, land troops, accept surrender." What happened next would haunt the veteran commander for the rest of his life. The moment his assault ships approached the mining station, every piece of debris in the area erupted in explosions. The humans had turned floating rocks into improvised mines. 3 of his assault craft were crippled before they even reached the station. "Impossible," Vexstar muttered. "They're using their own mining equipment as weapons." Inside the station, Eugen's team fought like demons. When the alien boarding craft finally breached the hull, they found themselves in a maze of death traps. Every corridor had been turned into a killing field. The humans used the station's own systems against the invaders, flooding sections with poisonous gases, cutting power to create deadly darkness, and using the mining equipment as improvised weapons. "They're not fighting like soldiers," reported one of Vexstar's ground commanders. "They're fighting like wild animals. They use their own wounded as bait. They turn every piece of furniture into a weapon, and they never stop learning our tactics." The siege lasted 3 brutal days. When the station finally fell silent, Vexstar transported down to see the aftermath. Personally, what he found disturbed him more than any battlefield from his previous wars. The humans had fought to the very last soldier, but they had done something else. They had been studying their enemies in the station's command center. Eugene Lee lay dead at her post, but her fingers were still clutching a data pad. On the screen were detailed notes about alien tactics, weapon capabilities, and behavioral patterns. Even in death, she had been gathering intelligence. Sir Lieutenant Krelmoth said quietly, "Our casualties were much higher than expected. We lost nearly a quarter of our assault force taking this tiny outpost." Vexstar stared at the human colonel's body. Something cold settled in his stomach. In all his years of warfare, he had never seen defenders fight with such calculated desperation. The humans hadn't just resisted. They had studied, adapted, and learned, even while dying. "Commander," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from across human space. They're not surrendering. They're mobilizing for war." For the first time in his career, Vexstar felt a flicker of doubt. These weren't the primitives he had expected. These were something else entirely, something that learned from every defeat, adapted to every tactic, and refused to accept the galaxy's established order. The war had begun.
Ow.
And already, Vexstar was beginning to suspect he had underestimated his enemy. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting to prove they belonged among the stars. They were willing to pay any price to make that point. As he returned to his flagship, Vexstar couldn't shake the image of that dead human colonel, still clutching her intelligence notes. The question that haunted him was simple. If 40 humans could cause this much damage, what would happen when he faced millions of them? The galaxy was about to find out. 2 weeks had passed since the bloody siege of Mining Station Alpha 7, and Commander Vexstar was beginning to question everything he knew about warfare. Each day brought reports that made less sense than the last. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were evolving. "Sir, we've lost another patrol squadron, Lieutenant," Kralmoth reported, his voice carrying a tension that hadn't been there before. The humans hit them near the asteroid belt of System J7. Same pattern as before? They appeared from nowhere, struck hard, then vanished. Vexstar's claws scraped against the metal railing of his command platform. "How many ships?" "2 destroyers. And a cruiser. But sir, that's not the disturbing part. The humans used our own plasma torpedoes against us. Somehow they've learned to manufacture them." Veteran commander felt his blood run cold. In 15 years of galactic warfare, he had never encountered an enemy that could reverse engineer hegemony technology in mere weeks. It should have been impossible. Captain Taman Park gripped the armrests of his command chair as the destroyer. Soul's Pride dropped out of hyperspace. His ship had been renamed and retrofitted with salvaged alien technology, transforming it from a simple patrol vessel into something that could actually hurt the invaders. "Target acquired," reported. his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sungwoo Lee. One hegemony scout ship, just like intelligence predicted. Timon had spent countless hours studying the alien patrol patterns. The hegemony moved like clockwork, following procedures that hadn't changed in decades. It made them predictable, and predictable enemies were dead enemies. Remember the plan, he said calmly. We hit them hard, grab what we can, and get out before their reinforcements arrive. Sungwoo, target their engine section. I want them disabled, not destroyed. The Soul's Pride struck like a viper. Modified human missiles, now equipped with alien shield-piercing technology, slammed into the scout ship's engines. The vessel spun helplessly, its crew probably wondering how primitive humans had penetrated their defenses. Captain Minho, bring the Busan Thunder around, Taemin ordered. Let's see what other toys they've brought us. Captain Minho Yoon's ship emerged from behind a nearby asteroid.
Oh.
Its hull scarred from previous battles but bristling with hybrid weapons. The two human vessels worked in perfect coordination, something that would have been impossible months ago. Their communication array is down, Minho reported. Whatever we do, they can't call for help. The boarding action was swift and brutal. Human Marines, now equipped with captured alien armor and weapons, stormed the scout ship. The hegemony crew fought bravely, but they were facing soldiers who had learned to fight in ways their military academies had never imagined. Commander,
What?
Shungo led the boarding party personally. The former intelligence officer had volunteered. For the most dangerous assignments, knowing that each captured ship brought humanity closer to understanding their enemies. Secure the computer core, he ordered Sergeant Kyung Min-han, and be careful with those energy cells. We've learned the hard way that alien technology doesn't like being handled roughly. The breakthrough came when they reached the scout ships. Main computer? Unlike the heavily encrypted systems on larger vessels, this one was designed for routine operations. Within minutes, O's team had downloaded terabytes of data, ship schematics, weapon specifications, and most importantly, shield frequencies. We've got it, O reported to Admiral Hyan-Soo. Everything we need to crack their defenses. Back on Earth, Dr. Yoon Kyung-shin was already deep in analysis. The brilliant engineer had been working around the clock, dissecting every piece of alien technology humanity could acquire. Her laboratory had become the most important facility on the planet. The shield technology is actually quite elegant, she explained to her team of exhausted scientists. It rotates through different energy frequencies to prevent sustained attacks. But if we can predict the pattern, ... Her assistant, Dr. Junho Park, looked up from his calculations. The rotation follows a mathematical sequence. If we can build weapons that cycle through the same frequencies, we can punch through their shields like they're made of paper, Dr. Shin finished. How long do we need? 72 hours to build a prototype. Another week to retrofit our fleet. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Vexstar was dealing with a crisis that threatened everything he believed about warfare. The human prisoner from the Kepler station raid had been brought to his flagship for interrogation. Standard procedure called for psychological pressure, intimidation, gradual information extraction. But Corporal Woo Jin Nam wasn't responding like a typical prisoner. The young Marine sat calmly in his cell, studying everything around him. With the intensity of a scholar, your ship design is fascinating, Woo Jin said during one interrogation session. All that armor must make you feel very safe. But it also makes you slow. In a real fight, speed beats armor every time. Vexstar's interrogation officer, Major Thekler, hissed in frustration. The prisoner continues to analyze our ship instead of answering questions. He's not just analyzing Vexstar, realized with growing horror. He's critiquing our military doctrine. How is that possible? Woo Jin smiled, an expression that sent chills down the alien commander's spine. You've been fighting the same way? For centuries, haven't you? Same formations, same tactics, same predictable responses? We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. Every war teaches us something new. The truth of that statement became clear during the next major engagement. Human forces, now equipped with weapons that could penetrate hegemony shields. struck at a convoy carrying critical supplies. The attack was devastating and precise. Impossible, Vexstar snarled as he watched the battle footage. Those weapons shouldn't exist. How did they learn to build them so quickly? His science officer, Dr. Velkin, studied the data with growing amazement. Commander, they're not just copying our technology, they're improving it. Look at these energy signatures. Their weapons are actually more efficient than ours. Convoy battle lasted only 20 minutes, but it changed everything. 3 hegemony cruisers were destroyed, their crews never understanding how primitive humans had suddenly become so dangerous. Sir, Lieutenant Kralmoth reported, we're receiving reports from across the sector. Human forces are striking at multiple targets simultaneously. They're using our own weapons against us. Vexstar stared at the tactical display, watching red icons disappear one by one. Each lost ship represented decades of technological development, centuries of military tradition, and the lives of crews who had never faced an enemy like this. How many ships have we lost? He asked quietly. 17 vessels in the past week. But sir, that's not the worst part. The humans are capturing our crews alive. They're studying us, learning how we think, how we fight. The veteran commander felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of warfare. Genuine fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of the unknown. The humans were rewriting the rules of galactic warfare in real time, and they were doing it faster than anyone could adapt. Get me a direct line to High Command, Vexter ordered. I need to report that we're not facing primitives. We're facing something far more dangerous. A species that treats every battle as a learning experience. As the transmission went out, Vexstar couldn't shake the image of that human prisoner, calmly analyzing hegemony ship design while sitting in a cell. The question that haunted him was simple. If one captured Marine could understand their weaknesses so quickly, what would happen when millions of humans turned their attention to the art of war? The galaxy was about to find out, and Vexstar was beginning to suspect that his people had awakened something that should have been left sleeping. 3 months had transformed the war from a simple conquest into a nightmare that kept Vexter awake. During his rest cycles, the humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had learned to fight better than their teachers, while still in the middle of being taught. Lieutenant Colonel Sechin Han stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with the calm confidence of a hunter who had studied his prey. His mixed fleet of 37 vessels looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships welded together with alien technology, captured hegemony cruisers rebuilt with human innovations, and entirely new hybrid designs that shouldn't have been possible. Sir, we're approaching the Proxima Centauri system, reported his tactical officer, Commander Yuri Kim. Long-range sensors show 18 hegemony vessels in defensive formation around the colony. Co. Kujian nodded, his eyes never leaving the display. Classic hegemony, defensive pattern. They're using the same formation they've used for the past 2 centuries. Captain Ko, is the Freedom's Edge ready? Captain Niyun. Ko's voice crackled through the comm system from the bridge of her captured hegemony cruiser. The massive ship had been completely gutted and rebuilt with human technology, its alien hull now bristling with weapons that its original designers had never imagined. Ready and eager, sir. The crew is looking forward to showing these aliens what their own ship can really do. The Freedom's Edge had become a symbol of human ingenuity. What had once been a proud hegemony warship was now a hybrid monster that combined alien durability with human creativity. Its weapons systems had been redesigned to fire faster. Its shields had been modified to regenerate quicker. And its engines had been souped up to move like a fighter instead of a cruiser. Remember, the plan CEO Jin announced to his fleet, hit their command ships first. Without coordination, they'll fall back on individual ship tactics, and we know those better than they do. The battle began with precision that would have impressed the most skilled hegemony admirals. Human forces moved in perfect coordination, their ships dancing through space with a grace that belied their origins. They had learned to fight not just with brute force, but with intelligence, strategy, and an understanding of their enemies that bordered on telepathic. Target the flagship, Seo-chin ordered. Full spread of modified plasma torpedoes. The human weapons struck with devastating effect. The torpedoes had been redesigned using captured hegemony technology, but improved with human innovation. They burned through alien shields like acid through paper, their warheads packed with explosives that had been developed in Earth's most secret laboratories. Commander Thexfell, the hegemony fleet commander, watched in horror as his flagship's shields collapsed under the human assault. Impossible. How did they learn to build weapons that powerful? His question was answered when boarding pods began slamming into his ship's hull. But these weren't ordinary boarding pods. They were humanized vessels that could cut through alien armor like hot knives through butter. The Marines that poured out of those pods were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Sergeant Major Kuncho Lee had spent months developing new combat techniques specifically for fighting aliens. Soldiers moved like dancers, their every movement calculated to exploit the weaknesses of non-human physiology. "Remember your training," Kyun-ho barked as his team swept through the alien corridors. "These reptilian species have slower reflexes when turning left. Their forearms give them strength, but they're clumsy in tight spaces. Use that against them." The human Marines flowed through the ship like water, adapting to every obstacle with frightening speed. When they encountered heavily armored hegemony soldiers, they used captured alien weapons with modifications that made them twice as deadly. When they faced energy barriers, they deployed countermeasures that had been developed by studying captured alien technology. "Sir, we've secured the bridge," Kyunjo reported. "The alien commander is requesting terms of surrender." Back on Earth, Dr. Hyjin Park was working in her laboratory, surrounded by dissected alien technology and biological samples. The brilliant xenobiologist had become humanity's secret weapon in understanding their enemies. The hegemony species all share certain characteristics, she explained to her research team. They're stronger than humans, more durable, and they have advanced technology. But they're also predictable. They've been fighting the same way for centuries. Her assistant, Dr. Min-Jen Lee, looked up from his analysis of alien neural patterns. "What do you mean predictable?" "They follow patterns. Military doctrine that hasn't changed in generations. Social hierarchies that prevent innovation. They've become so comfortable with their superiority that they've forgotten how to adapt." Dr. Park's research had revealed something crucial about the hegemony forces. Their military training was based on fighting other advanced species with similar technology and tactics. They had never faced an enemy that could learn and adapt faster than they could respond. "We've been fighting each other for millennia," she continued. "Every human war has been a lesson in innovation. We've learned to fight with everything from sticks and stones to nuclear weapons. We've adapted to every possible enemy, every possible situation." The proof of her theories was playing out across the galaxy. Human forces, now equipped with a deadly combination of alien technology and human innovation, were striking at hegemony positions with surgical precision. Admiral Hyansu, now commanding a fleet of over 200 vessels, had planned something unprecedented in galactic warfare, a coordinated assault on 3 star systems simultaneously. The logistics alone should have been impossible for a species that had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Kim," he announced. "Operation Prometheus is now active. Commander Kong, begin your assault on System Alpha 7. Colonel Yu, you're clear to engage the shipyards at Beta 3. I'll handle the command center at Gamma 12. The 3 human fleets moved with clockwork precision, their attacks timed to prevent any hegemony force from reinforcing the others. It was a strategy that required perfect communication, flawless timing, and an understanding of galactic warfare that should have taken decades to develop. Commander Sujin Kong led her fleet against the heavily defended shipyards at Alpha 7. Her ships moved like a pack of wolves, picking apart the hegemony defenses with tactics that combined human creativity with alien technology. "They're trying to form a defensive wall," reported her tactical officer. "Standard hegemony response. Then we'll use their own tactics against them," Sujin replied. "All ships, execute formation Delta 7. Let's show them what their own strategies look like when they're done right."
Ow.
The human ships reformed into a classic hegemony attack pattern, but with modifications that made it twice as effective. They had studied every alien battle recording, analyzed every tactical decision, and learned to use hegemony strategies better than the hegemony themselves. Colonel Junho Yu's assault on the Beta 3 system was even more devastating. His forces had learned to fight not just with weapons, but with psychology. They broadcast messages on hegemony frequencies, using captured alien voices to spread confusion and doubt among the defenders. "Attention hegemony forces," the broadcasts announced. "Your command structure has been compromised. Multiple fleets have already surrendered. Resistance is futile." Psychological warfare was devastatingly effective. Hegemony crews, trained to follow orders without question, began to hesitate when those orders came from sources they couldn't trust. In the confusion, human forces struck with precision that turned the battle into a rout. Vexstar watched the reports flowing in from across the sector, each one more disturbing than the last. His forces were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to understand hegemony tactics better than the hegemony themselves. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we've intercepted human communications. They're coordinating attacks across multiple star systems using a communication network that's more advanced than anything we've seen." "That's impossible," Vexter snarled. "They're primitives." "Not anymore, Commander. They've been studying us, learning from every engagement. They know our response patterns, our tactical doctrines, our weaknesses. They've turned our own strategies against us." The veteran commander stared at the tactical display, watching red icons disappear one by one. Each lost ship represented not just military failure, but the collapse of everything he believed about warfare. The humans had done something that should have been impossible. They had learned to fight better than their enemies, while still learning to fight. As the reports continued to pour in, Vexstar realized that he was facing something unprecedented in galactic history. The humans weren't just winning battles, they were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. They were doing it faster than anyone could adapt. The galaxy had awakened something that should have been left sleeping. And now it was too late to put it back to sleep. The largest human fleet in history hung in the darkness of space, like a constellation of steel and fire. Admiral Hyen-Soo Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, watching 312 vessels prepare for the most important battle in human history. Ships that had been built in Earth's orbital shipyards floated alongside, captured hegemony cruisers that had been gutted and rebuilt with human technology. "Sir, all fleet commanders are standing by," reported Captain Taman Park, now serving as the Admiral's chief of staff. "Admiral So-Young Kim's strike force is in position at Rally Point Alpha." Hyen-Soo nodded, his weathered face showing the strain of months of constant warfare. At 28, Admiral So-Young Kim was the youngest fleet commander in human history. But she had earned her position through brilliant tactical thinking and an uncanny ability to predict enemy movements. "Operation Prometheus is our chance to end this war," Hyen-Soo announced to his assembled commanders. "But remember, we're not just fighting for victory. We're fighting to prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars." The human fleet began to move, and it was like watching a perfectly choreographed dance of destruction. Ships that had been cobbled together from salvaged parts moved with precision that would have impressed the most elite hegemony formations. The humans had learned to fight not just with their hands, but with their minds, their hearts, their unbreakable will to survive. Captain Jae-Han Lim commanded the spearhead assault from the bridge of the Determination, a hybrid battleship. That represented everything humanity had learned about warfare. The ship's hull was hegemony built, but its weapons were human designed. Its shields were a fusion of both technologies, and its crew was something entirely new. "All stations, this is Captain Lim," he announced as his ship led the charge. "Today, we show them what humans are really capable of." The Determination was a monster of a ship. Its main guns fired plasma bolts that had been modified with human innovations to burn twice as hot. Its missile tubes launched warheads that could think for themselves, adapting their attack patterns based on enemy defenses. Its hull was covered in reactive armor that could repair itself during battle. "Target the command station," Lim ordered. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Hyen Wu Chang, Let's cut off their head first. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for generations. Human forces moved like a single organism, their ships coordinating attacks with telepathic precision. They struck from multiple directions simultaneously, using tactics that violated every principle of traditional space warfare. Commander Vextar watched from his command ship as his carefully planned defenses crumbled like sandcastles. The humans attacked from above and below, angles that shouldn't have been possible in three-dimensional space. They used captured hegemony ships as decoys, drawing fire while their real assault forces struck from unexpected directions. "Sir, there. Jamming our communications," reported his tactical officer, Major Kethver. "Our ships can't coordinate properly." "Switch to backup frequencies," Vextar ordered, but he knew it was too late. The humans had learned to fight not just with weapons, but with information warfare that turned the hegemony's own technology. Against them, the human fleet moved like a pack of wolves that had learned to hunt together. Admiral Soi Young Kim's strike force punched through the hegemony's left flank, her ships moving with an agility that defied their size. Her flagship, the Soul's Revenge, danced between enemy fire like a fighter craft, its weapons carving through alien shields with surgical precision. "They're adapting to our tactics faster than we can implement them," Vextar's intelligence officer reported. "Every countermeasure we deploy, they have a countermeasure ready within minutes." Truth was even more disturbing. The humans weren't just reacting to hegemony tactics. They were predicting them. Months of studying alien battle recordings had given them an understanding of hegemony strategy that bordered on prescience. "Captain." Jahan Lim's determination carved through the enemy formation like a knife through silk. His ship's hybrid weapon systems fired in perfect synchronization, each shot calculated to maximize damage while minimizing exposure to return fire. "Sir, we've breached their inner perimeter," reported his navigator, Ensign Daeyoon Park. "The command station is in range." "All weapons concentrate fire on the command tower," Lim ordered. "Let's end this." The assault was devastating. Human weapons, now refined through months of combat experience, struck with precision that turned the battle into a rout. Hegemony ships that had seemed invincible just hours before were being torn apart by weapons that shouldn't have existed. But the most terrifying moment came when human boarding pods began slamming into Vextar's flagship. The alien commander had faced boarding actions before, but nothing like this. The human pods didn't just breach the hull, they exploded through it like guided missiles, with crews pouring out before the defense systems could react. Major Byung-ho Park led the assault personally, his team of Marines moving through the alien corridors with the confidence of soldiers who had learned to fight in every possible environment. These weren't the desperate defenders from the mining station months ago. These were warriors who had been forged in the crucible of interstellar warfare. "Sergeant Kim, take your team to the engine room," Park ordered. "Corporal Lee, secure the weapon systems. I want this ship disabled, not destroyed." The human Marines moved like ghosts through the alien ship, their every movement calculated to exploit the weaknesses. They had learned through months of studying hegemony psychology and physiology. They used captured alien weapons with modifications that made them twice as deadly, and their tactics were a perfect fusion of human creativity and alien technology. "Sir, we've secured the bridge," reported Sergeant Il-sung Kim. The alien commander is requesting terms. Major Park stepped onto the bridge of the hegemony flagship, his assault rifle trained on Commander Vextar. The alien leader stood surrounded by his defeated crew, his forearms spread in a gesture of surrender. "Surrender your vessel," Park demanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned his position through blood and battle. "This war is over." But Vextar wasn't ready to accept defeat. The proud warrior had never surrendered in his entire career, and he wasn't about to start now. Drawing his ceremonial blade, a weapon that had been forged on his homeworld and blessed by the war priests of his people, he challenged the human officer to single combat. "By the laws of the hegemony, I claim the right of personal combat," Vextar declared, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of military tradition. "Will you face me, human?" Major Park looked at the alien commander with eyes that had seen too much war, too much death, and too much sacrifice. He could have simply ordered his men to shoot, could have ended the war with a single command. Instead, he holstered his weapon and drew his own blade. "So be it," Park replied, his voice carrying a calmness that chilled the alien commander to his core. The two warriors faced each other in the center of the bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of a war that had changed everything. One was a veteran of galactic conflicts, trained in the finest military academies in the galaxy. The other was a human who had learned to fight by fighting, who had earned his skills through brutal experience and an unbreakable will to survive. The duel was about to begin, and with it, the final chapter of a war that had shown the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The main hangar of the Hegemony flagship had been cleared for the ancient ritual of single combat. Soldiers from both sides formed a circle, their weapons lowered but ready. The massive space echoed with the sound of boots on metal as hundreds of warriors watched two figures prepare to decide the fate of a war. Commander Vexstar stood nearly 8 feet tall, his reptilian muscles rippling beneath scarred scales that told the story of 3 galactic wars. In his 4 hands, he held a ceremonial blade that had been forged in the volcanic fires of his homeworld, its edge sharp enough to cut through starship armor. The weapon had never tasted defeat in personal combat. Major Byung-ho Park looked small by comparison. A human in standard military armor carrying nothing but a simple combat knife. But his eyes held something that made even the veteran alien commander pause, the cold confidence of a predator who had learned to hunt. "You fight well for a primitive Vexter," snarled as their weapons clashed for the first time. The ceremonial blade rang against Park's knife, sparks flying in the dim hangar light. "We're not primitives," Park replied, his voice steady as he deflected a strike that would have decapitated a lesser opponent. "We're survivors." The duel began in earnest, and immediately it was clear that this wasn't a simple contest of strength. Vexstar had the advantage in reach, power, and experience. But Park moved with a fluidity that seemed to defy the laws of physics. He flowed around the alien's attacks like water, striking where his opponent was weakest. "You've been trained well," Vexstar admitted, pressing forward with a series of strikes that would have overwhelmed most opponents. "But training can only take you so far." Park smiled, an expression that sent chills down the spines of the watching Hegemony soldiers. "You're right, training isn't enough. That's why we don't just train, we learn." As the duel continued, Park began to explain what Vexstar had failed to understand about humanity. Every move he made, every counterattack, every defensive maneuver, was a lesson in human warfare philosophy. "You think war is about conquest?" Park said, landing a shallow cut across Vexstar's arm. "About imposing your will on others. But for us, war is about evolution." The human's words struck deeper than his blade. Vexstar began to realize that he wasn't just fighting a soldier, he was fighting the product of thousands of years of human conflict. Every technique Park used had been refined through centuries of warfare, tested in battles that had shaped human civilization. This entire war, Park continued, dodging another strike with movements that seemed almost casual, has been our education. You've taught us about galactic warfare, about alien psychology, about technologies we never imagined. And we've learned it all. Vexter's attacks became more desperate as he realized the truth. The humans hadn't just been fighting the hegemony. They had been studying them. Every battle, every engagement, every captured ship had been a lesson in galactic warfare. The hegemony had unwittingly created the perfect enemy by teaching them everything they needed to know. "Impossible," Vexter gasped, his forearms beginning to tire from the constant assault. "You're just one species. We've conquered dozens of civilizations." "And that's your weakness," Park replied, pressing his attack with surgical precision. "No, you've been fighting the same war for centuries. We've been fighting different wars for millennia. Every human conflict taught us something new." The human began to explain as they fought, his words coming between strikes and parries. Humanity had fought with swords and spears, with guns and explosives, with tanks and aircraft, with missiles and nuclear weapons. Each era of human warfare had demanded new tactics, new strategies, new ways of thinking about conflict. "You learned to fight aliens," Park said, landing another cut on Vexstar's arm. "We learned to fight everything." The alien commander's ceremonial blade began to feel heavy in his hands. He had trained for decades in the finest military academies, studied under the greatest war masters of his species, fought in campaigns that had shaped galactic history. But he had never faced an enemy like this. Your species has been fighting the same way for generations, Park continued, his movements becoming more aggressive. Same formations, same tactics, same strategies. You've become predictable. With a series of lightning-fast strikes, Park began to dismantle Vextar's defense. The human's blade found gaps in the alien's guard that shouldn't have existed, exploited weaknesses that had been built into hegemony combat doctrine over centuries of tradition. We study our enemies, Park explained, his knife work becoming a deadly dance. We learn how they think, how they move, how they fight, and then we find ways to do it better. The final exchange came suddenly. Vextar launched a desperate attack, putting all his strength behind a strike that should have ended the duel. But Park was no longer there. The human had moved with inhuman speed, his blade cutting through the alien's wrist guards and sending the ceremonial weapon spinning across the hangar floor. Vextar found himself on his knees, disarmed and defeated. But instead of the killing blow he expected, Park extended his hand to help the alien commander to his feet. "The war is over," Park announced to the assembled soldiers. But not because we've conquered you, because we've learned what we needed to learn." Admiral Hyansu entered the hangar, his weathered face showing the strain of months of warfare. Behind him came officers from both sides, humans and aliens who had fought each other with desperate ferocity just hours before. The hegemony sought to subjugate humanity. The admiral addressed the assembled forces. "Instead, you've created something far more dangerous, a species that views every conflict as a classroom. Every enemy is a teacher." Dr. Hyjin Park's research had revealed the truth that would reshape galactic politics. The humans hadn't just defeated the hegemony through superior tactics or technology. They had done something far more profound. They had learned to fight better than their enemies by studying those enemies' own methods and improving upon them. "We don't seek to conquer the galaxy," Admiral Hyansu explained to the assembled alien officers. "We seek to protect it, because we've learned that there are far greater threats out there than any of us imagined." The integration began immediately. Human officers started training hegemony forces in adaptive tactics, showing them how to think like their enemies and anticipate their moves. Alien technology was freely shared with human engineers, who immediately began improving upon designs that had remained unchanged for centuries. Commander Vextar, now serving as a liaison between human and hegemony forces, often reflected on the conflict that had changed everything. He had thought he knew war, had believed that his species' military traditions were the pinnacle of strategic thinking. He had been wrong. The humans had shown him that war wasn't about following ancient doctrines or maintaining traditional tactics. War was about adaptation, evolution, and the constant refinement of one's ability to survive and protect what mattered. As he watched human and alien soldiers training together, preparing for conflicts yet to come, Vextar understood the truth. Humanity hadn't just won a war, they had redefined what war could be. It had shown the galaxy that the greatest weapon wasn't superior technology or overwhelming force, but the ability to learn, adapt, and evolve faster than your enemies. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the rim, other threats were stirring. Unaware that they would soon face an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. A species that had learned to turn every conflict into a lesson, every defeat into victory, and every war into an opportunity to become something greater. The end.